Thank you for joining me on this John's Journal episode. And we are continuing in Nicholas Cresswell. He's in his sort of second trip into the wilderness. Lots of interactions and descriptions about what's going on with Native Americans. Again, this is 1775, right before the revolution. There's a lot of turmoil on the frontier here. And here we go. And remember, he sort of got lost like he does so many times in this part of the book, and he found some Native Americans, and they set him up for the night. So this morning my bedfellow went into the woods and caught her horse and mine, saddled them, put my blanket on the saddle, prepared everything ready, seemingly with a great deal of good nature, absolutely refused my assistance. The old woman gave me some dried venison for breakfast. When I took my leave, returned the thanks as well as I could by signs. My bedfellow was my guide and conducted me through the woods, where there is no sign of a road, or without my knowing with certainty whither I was going. She often mentioned John Anderson and talked a great deal in Indian. I attempted to speak Indian, which diverted her exceedingly. In about an hour, she brought me to Mr. Anderson's camp, who had been very uneasy at my absence and employed an Indian to seek me. I gave my Dulcinea a match coat, which is sort of like a blanket shawl, with which she seemed very well pleased. Proceeded on our journey, and about noon got to an Indian town called Walhack-Tapok, or Town with a Good Spring, on the banks of the Muskingum, and inhabited by Delaware Indians, Christianized under the Moravian sect. It was a pretty town consisting of about 60 houses, which is built of logs and covered with clapboards. It was regularly laid out in 3 spacious streets, which met in the center, where there's a large meeting house built of logs, 60 feet square, covered with shingles. Glass in the windows, and a bell, a good plank floor with 2 rows of forms, adorned with some few pieces of scripture painting, but very indifferently executed. All about the meeting house is kept very clean. In the evening I went to the meeting, but never was I more astonished in my life. I expected to have seen nothing but anarchy and confusion, as I have been taught to look upon these beings with contempt. Instead of that, here is a greatest regularity, order, and decorum I ever saw in any place of worship in my life, with that solemnity of behavior and modest religious deportment would do honor to the first religious society on earth and put a bigot or enthusiast out of countenance. The parson was a Dutchman, but preached in English. He had an Indian interpreter who explained it to the Indians by sentences. They sung in the Indian language. The men sit on one row of forms and the women on the other, with children in the front, and each sex comes in and goes out their own side of the house. The old men sit on each side of the parson, treated with tea and coffee and boiled bacon for supper. The sugar they made themselves out of the sap of a certain tree, lodged at White Whitman's house, married to an Indian woman. Monday, August 28th, 1775, left Walhack-Tapok, crossed the Muskingum, and went to Canantohead, another pretty Moravian town, but not so large as Walhack-Tapok, about 8 miles asunder, across the Muskingum again, and a large plain about 3 miles over, without a tree, shrub, and very level. Saw several Indian cabins built with bark. Got to Newcomer Town about noon. This has been a large town, but is now almost deserted. It is on the Muskingum, built without any order or regularity. I suppose there's not 20 houses inhabited now. Crossed the Muskingum again, and another large plain. Met several Indians coming from a feast, dressed and painted in the grandest manner. Lodged at White Eye's town, only 3 houses in it. Kindly treated at a Dutch blacksmith's, who lives with an Indian squaw. Got a very hearty supper of a sort of dumplings made of Indian meal and dried huckleberries, which serves instead of currants. Dirty people. Find it impossible to keep myself free from lice. Very disagreeable companions. I think he's talking about the lice as companions, but either way. So I'm going to stop there for this day. There's, he's already painting another picture of the Native Americans. He even says it right there in the text, doesn't he? He says, I was taught to look down on these people with contempt, and I don't even know, what he's what the stories were told in England about what the Native Americans were like. In the 17th century, there was almost a genre of writings which talked a lot about Native Americans and captivity narratives, and so I think there was there were these competing views of Native Americans in the time period, depending on what the person who was writing it was trying to convey. Either, these are, this is no problem at all, or they're horrible savages, or whatever. And he's already finding that there's a lot more stories, or a lot more. The truth is much more varied than he would have thought it was, which is, I think, true for every situation where you're interacting with this sort of high-level stereotype of what a kind of person is like, and then you interact with them, and it's it's like, well, there's all kinds of people, right? sometimes it plays right to stereotype, and other times it's completely different. So here he's learning a lot more about what the society is like. He goes into the Moravians did work very hard with the Native Americans, especially the Delaware, and so we see this particular town that is, as he would say, very Christianized. The houses are log houses, but they have clapboards. They're all protected from the outside. They don't look like horrible, crude structures. They have a meeting house that's very like he would expect, not necessarily in a Native American town, right? It's got the 2 doors and the seating separately, which is common in some different Christian sects at the time, especially something like the Quakers, but obviously here the Moravians also. And he goes to the church service, and actually, if you read in the text here for other church services that he attends, he has nothing good to say about them. When he's on the coast in so-called civilized situations, the preaching is basically everything that's happening there is all about the upcoming war or the war that's happening, and so most of what's being preached is interacting with that particular happening. And so he complains that they're not the Sunday services aren't anything but about war. And here he goes to this one, and it's probably kind of completely different, although he doesn't tell us about what the topic was. But we see that the interactions with the society are very, very, they're different. They're not what he expects. And so a very, very valuable journal to get a little more understanding, especially what his expectations were, and then what he finds when he gets there. Thank you for coming along on this John's Journal. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I really want to thank you for your amazing support. Thanks for watching.